today we are speaking with a follower of Paimon that is also an artist for a change, as I have spoken with many, many, many writers and like 0% artists. And this is the artist that does all of my covers. And you even have my book, which is very flattering.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm lucky I found this with all my boxes. I just recently moved, so
It
I
is
have all your
funny
older stuff.
because that is the only cover that you didn't do. And I don't have my own books as well. But you
Oh,
have my books.
yes, it's very good. So we're just gonna do a self plug here. Well, not really a self plug. It's not me, but here you go. It's very nice. Very big pages. Looks beautiful. It's got a nice, the landscape. It's very gorgeous. Get the purple and the pink, and there's also a back with the same.
It was the only book that I didn't know how to format, so it ended up being giant.
Honestly, it works because you have the photography. Got to show the picture, right? So,
I have fairly weirdly formatted books from things that I myself read, and then I realize how uncomfortable that is and go, oh no. I didn't format my first book. It's giant. Um, anyway, you probably have art to show us, or art to talk about, or art things.
I do. So, I'm doing your next cover. Share my screen here. Open up the
How does it feel to be
program.
creative with Paimon, by the way?
Feels very natural. Honestly, it's something I've done before I could remember. Um, like even in childhood, my dad would have these little trinkets I made. I don't remember making them. And I was already like 4 or 5, and I'm like, I don't remember making that, but I did. Um, so literally before I could remember, it's like a lifelong practice. It's always something I come back to. A lot of artists will say, have you painted recently? Don't commit. Emotional unaliving. It's a very great tool to process things. Um, a meditative flow. My friends in high school, she was also a little painter. She would get into it, and she would paint for like 6 hours, and then it's like 5 a.m. on a school day. So
Oh god.
getting into the zone, you just kind of let it go. The creative process, kind of working with those creative spirits, they, just by creating something and see what happens.
How did she not die going into school at like 1 or 2 hours of sleep?
That mostly, I think it was either over the summer, and there's a couple of nights where she just completely lost track of time. Just kind of take a coffee and just kind of take a slow day, not really paying attention, I suppose.
Ooh, another window.
Another window.
Another one. Okay, we're trying to look at three things at once, which is me, you, and the window. Do you have any
Do you have it?
experience like of creating without Paimon compared with creating with Paimon?
I think that's probably something I can't even separate. I don't think I've ever really been able to separate it. I remember being very young, maybe 5 or 6. I'm like, I'm going to dedicate my life to arts and science. Like, I remember the specific moment. I was, living in the country in Virginia, rural Virginia, like kind of like on this porch looking out, and there's just like the yard. Not really a yard because it's just a bunch of forest and a bit of yard, but just thinking, yeah, I'm gonna do this and this, because people kind of put it like a weird dichotomy on it, like it's either logic or it's irrational. But I think if you have a method, you become a better artist. If you're artist, you become a better scientist. Kind of like a counterpoint, I think. Um, And then fast forward, I feel like I got this wisdom from somewhere, and I always was a little paranoid. Maybe there's a spirit. Maybe I'm just I don't want to be too crazy and ungrounded, but maybe there's spirits somewhere giving me gnosis downloads. No, from the ether. No. And then fast forward all the way into high school, and one of the only art classes I ever actually was able to take, because I was very nomadic. My family moved around a lot. And he was just literally saying all of the things that I was coming to understand at age 5 or 6. But in a high school class, I'm just kind of like, why did I take this? It's just confirming everything. Like everything is art. Automobiles, any industry takes somebody in a drawing room or an application with a tablet somewhere. So there's always a vision, and you have to birth that vision out into, dissolve and coagulate those ideas down into, the material. You can get really philosophical with that on that end, but literally taking your ideas and then putting them out into the world. That is the whole, I would think. The biggest whole, the biggest sort of encompassing lesson. And of course, creation also entails destruction, and also entails of eventually you got to let go of what you've made so you can make room for other things. So it's kind of like an ever churning, ever swirling kind of thing.
How many artist friends do you have, by the way?
And now I've always grown up with a couple online. There's one friend I've had, we met over like this now defunct, you can't go on it anymore, they deleted the website, but it was like a little simple HTML painting website, kind of like Drawpile, but it's in browser. I met her there, and we were both 12, and we've just been on a crazy journey. Just she's mostly in the New England area, and I've just been literally everywhere. So we would just kind of pass drawings back and forth collaboratively, or we would go on iScribble when that was a thing, or Drawpile now, and just kind of branch out and find people. And then besides her and a bunch of other fleeting people from, I would say, either iScribble or Instagram, so the other applications, some of them aren't even around anymore. But nowadays, I think I have a lot more, and thanks to the the spiritual or philosophical community and the demonology communities, because it's kind of the spirits have kind of brought us together in a way, over VR chat and Discord, which is really funny. People you meet on the most random of places, honestly. So I'm kind of surrounded by them now, and we want to start an art collective or a company and make some stock. I'm going to maybe a couple of art markets with a friend, Beryl Rivka, and she has some prints available and things too. Of course, there's a couple of servers that used to be in, and they're still making things too with the spirits. And I've also been doing your books too, your book covers, and other people's commissions if they just want like a little piece of work to put on their altar. I usually paint some of those, although I prefer to paint those traditionally with oils or with gouache or acrylics or embroider or just mixed media or ink. Kind of do a little bit of everything.
How do you think people that work with Paimon and art compare with people that work with different spirits or no spirits at all?
Um, how would they compare? Well, I guess it just depends on how implicit or how explicit things can be. So I was kind of dealing with this my whole life, and then there's a small voice in the back of my head where I was having my suspicions on, I'm just kind of going through and studying various religions, world religions. I've always been kind of a perennialist, so I've always thought maybe there's some bigger truth everyone observes, and then culturally depending, that's what they're going to hash out the little details onto. But I think this is my natural process. This is my natural end, arriving to this. And I think maybe a lot of other people might be influenced or naturally are participating in these sorts of influences or these emanations of these forces. So either it's a creative force, a destructive force, maybe a duality of those, and it's the whole as you explore those things. So I think it really depends explicitly. So obviously, I have a statue here and things like that. So it's just become more aware consciously versus subconsciously. I'm just doing a lot of artistic things. I move around a lot. Everything's kind of impermanent. So you kind of cherish what you're able to do and move on. As all things are prone to decay, and you just keep moving on and creating more things. So, I think a lot of people I've met over my life have done the same thing, but are they exactly called to a spiritual practice? Maybe, maybe not, and maybe it doesn't take this form, but I think it could take a lot of different forms. This just happens to be one of them. So
Do you think there are a lot of unaware people that are somewhat affected by the spiritual without even realizing it?
yeah, absolutely. As a Platonist, so that's kind of like my philosophical foundation. You have water everywhere, whether or not you go to the beach every day, it's still there. And you still drink water. It still makes up a large percentage of your body. It's still, it's in the atmosphere, it precipitates, it's everywhere. Kind of depends on what you're doing in your day, how much of it you really are around, and how much you really pay attention and really take it in. It's like, this is great. And that's such a simple example, but it can go for a lot of things. I think as a whole system, there's a lot of different forces that kind of mingle together. So you have maybe a person that's got a couple of different influences in a given day, or for a major period of time. I guess you would call that more like a patron, right? So, or more people are prone to just kind of hopping a lot of different streams. But I think it goes all from one source. You can find a lot of different things in between, but it's that one source material that experiences all this difference and variance of itself. So
Have you tried creating with any other spirits?
yes, done quite a few of them. So a lot of them I need to finish. Just a lot of projects like to stagger at the same time, and I finish some and then I have to go back to others. There is actually an oil painting I did for a friend, Alex, and now he's an augur for his Hellenismos organization down in Texas. So I've been friends with him for a while. So I painted Selena for him, and I have sitting on the windowsill over there. I forgot to bring it over, but it's basically the counterpart to that Helios. They're like little portraits, kind of just see what comes out on the canvas, kind of like impressionistic, with gold leaf. I wish I had a photo of that brought up on my computer, but I think it's only on my phone. So I've worked, with Selena, and all of these I do try to invoke the spirit to literally, like with the practice of statuary, so you call in the spiritual essence into the object, and through the creative process, even from the initial twinkling in the eye kind of thing throughout the whole gestation period of planning, sketching, what kind of color palettes, and then the first stages of painting. I think it still calls in all of the essences into that from start to finish. And of course, you can do other rituals alongside that planetary. You can do any number of things, incenses. You can kind of fumigate whatever fabric. If you're working with fabrics, you can or just the painting itself, especially because fabrics hold on to it. But you can kind of fumigate it with the according incenses, color magic, anything that's associated, especially when we're talking about these kind of spirits that have a big profile to work with. You can even do things where it's like you crush up like a homeopathic quantity, some crystals that are associated or some plants that are associated with it, and use it with the pigments or with the paints. I have done that. You can also do like an actual just invocation ritual and invoke it into the piece of work. And I've also done some other goetic spirits. I've have to finish some of those. A lot of life events, but see on this wild journey. And I've painted Paimon quite a few different times, but over the years I've lost some of those artworks just to moving, or just because I get this. I think a lot of artists can maybe can really relate to this. Is you work on something, oh, that's good, and then you return to it after a while and like, oh, this is terrible, throw it away, I'm gonna do a better one. So there's a lot of that, but then I wish I should have had some kind of record of it because I think it was still nice. But it's a lot of things that I've let go over the years, which just could also be a good practice spiritually overall, is the process of letting go, making something new again. So with the built on the skills you've learned previously. So
When you invoke a spirit to do artwork of them, how much of it, how much is the artwork influenced by you, and how much is it influenced by the spirit, do you think?
I think that can really depend on the nature of the artwork and the kind of artwork that it is. I would like to think of it as like a dance. But even in some dance styles, you have the footwork or the choreography that maybe would highlight a lot of the one partner's moves, or you can have a thing where it's just like an equal give and take, or it can be a lot of yourself in it. There's a lot of psychology, I think, around creating art. To look at the artist's portrait, even if it's somebody else, you're actually looking at the artist, or you're looking at maybe whatever went into the work. Like maybe this guy, no, but so maybe it's a little bit in between. I think it can really depend, and it depends on who's viewing it, who picks apart it. A lot of different people will look at the same picture and notice something else and a completely different point of view of it. So I think it's also subjective to the viewer.
I completely interrupted you. You were going to walk us through what you are doing right now with that beautiful
No, you're fine.
iceberg over there.
No, that's fine. That could just stay up there too. But yeah, let me get back to that window. Yeah, so for this even, yeah, so I have my palette colors up here. Yeah, so with the sky, I should have started this as a speed paint. So I started, of course, with just a sketch. And I have a couple of different references of like really beautiful icebergs, very picturesque. They bring out a lot of aqua or just like the white, and also, of course, the actual meme, the iceberg meme for the bottom. And it builds slowly. So even for this area on the background here, I was doing a lot of blocky colors in the program. It has like a little textured like oil brush, so it's thick, but it can blend. And it can blend out and diffuse beautifully too. So there's just a lot of like blocky colors. You can kind of focus on the geometry and the shades, and then from there, I kind of borrow my oil and other like traditional, because I've mostly been a traditional artist for most of my life. But I've borrowed that and taken it over to digital where and in oils, to preserve the actual colors, you'd want to do a lot of different spots of just the vibrant colors themselves and do not a whole lot of blending, because that can really muddle everything, or it can blend it out way too much. You don't want that, so you just got to go in with like every little shade and put them right next to each other, kind of like a mosaic, but with the pigments. And that's a way of doing it. And also I just kind of do blending anyway, just a little bit of this and that, and just kind of go with the happy medium. That's what I've kind of done with the sky, just kind of playing around with it and taking the larger shapes and then kind of blending them out, and then go with a smaller brush and just kind of make minute details and put little colors and very, very little differences of the pigments next to each other. And like I said, you kind of get like a mosaic where if you then you look back at it and it becomes a beautiful image. So it's like it starts with a rough kind of a rough shape and a rough patches of hues, and then you just kind of keep working at it and making those larger details and break them down to smaller details. And some artists will even entirely paint in black and white, and then they color over on top with filters, and that can also work. So it really just depends on what I feel. And a lot of the times I find through the process, the whole creative process, is that I plan, this is exactly how I want it, but then of course when you're actually doing it and the final product, it's going to take you where it wants to take you, and you're just coming along with the journey sometimes too. So that's basically it for my process in general, and also for this one so far. And it's not finished yet, but I'm feeling good about it so far. I'm having a lot of fun with it. So
How do you decide when artwork is finished versus not finished? Because from my perspective, you could just sell this as it is, or you can even like switch off details and still sell it.
yeah, that also does depend. I mean, no artwork's really finished. You can always return back to it. You can, I mean, if the great masters were alive, they could still go back to the Mona Lisa and keep fiddling with it and keep applying layers. And that's the beauty of especially oil paints or tempera, even old school tempera. With a lot of how iconography, like Byzantine iconography, was made. You can always do more, but there's kind of a caution to just let it go naturally and then have it come to its natural finish without forcing it to forcing a perfectionist kind of product on it. Of course, there are some artists that when they work for a certain type of job, they have to care about the product, but sometimes it's good to just focus on the process, because you can overwork a canvas, and when you overwork it, it can kind of lose that initial sort of, I guess you would call it candid energy or candid spirit that was flowing through it at that time. And it can kind of lose its original momentum. I feel like it can become kind of stale or stuck on a specific thing that you're like, oh, I need to just keep fiddling with this one part of it, and then you realize you've ruined it. Especially in traditional, you can't really just click the undo buttons as you would with digital. So it takes a certain, like when you feel you've arrived to its natural end, and then that honestly that just takes the skill of just doing a lot of portraiture, doing a lot of landscapes, doing a lot of whatever your craft is to feel comfortable, like where to stop or how to tie it in. Just gotta keep creating, and we'll find those muscles.
How would you say digital compares to physical?
It's a lot easier. It's a lot more convenient. It's also a lot cheaper. You get one program and you can just use it indefinitely compared to very expensive products, especially pigments. Certain pigments can get, sorry, I'm trying to adjust something here. Very specific pigments can be hundreds of dollars if they're high quality. And the tools do matter for traditional artists. They really do matter. especially because it will help the ease of your creative process. A great artist can use any kind of less than ideal tool, but is it really going to allow you to just flourish on the canvas? Maybe that's to be debated, but it's just a lot easier when you've got like a high-speed internet connection versus a slow one, and you just want to come on, let's go do it, instead of just trying to make a round peg fit into like a square shaped hole. I mean, any master could probably make that actually fit in there, but it's just kind of futility, what you want to do with it. So,
What is the most expensive pigment that you ever allowed yourself to use?
honestly, I haven't gotten there yet to the point where I want to get that avant-garde. But I have this massive like tapestry painting. And my original commissioner kind of went MIA, had some health stuff, and he hasn't really reconnected back since then. I'm very understanding, but with that one, I think I was going to go and explore some of those really high quality pigments. I know some of the blue pigments they use very rare, either like plant-based materials, and that can get very expensive because the whole process to kind of extrude and extract those pigments is a lengthy and methodical process, and it doesn't yield a lot of pigment to begin with, so you're using a lot of it, and it's hard to actually get that process going. Some of them use gemstones like lapis lazuli or other things that are just hard to find in nature, and they haven't found a way to synthesize it in a lab yet. So, but most of my stuff, I just use maybe Winsor and Newton's oil paint line. Grumbacher I know is good, and there's some other watercolor. I have some watercolor that's sitting over there, but I can't remember the brand name. But yeah, I mean, it can be very budget friendly. It doesn't have to be something kind of avant-garde where you're kind of stepping a little bit outside of your capabilities or your zone of your like normal budget or your normal area that you would ideally want to spend or what you ideally would like to accomplish. But
Is that like scary? Like when you just have a small vial that's worth its weight in gold and you're like, I'm gonna put this on this painting. What if it doesn't work out?
yeah, that's also the thing where I've been very patchy with my practice. So, and this is maybe some others, other artists can relate to this, where take like a hiatus and then your style changes, or the way you work with colors change, and then with the mistakes that go with each kind of iteration of that kind of thing. So ideally, yeah, it's probably why I've waited for a while before I go and do experimental stuff like that. Because it would be a costly mistake, or if you're like, oh, I could have done this, it's like a half realization on the halfway through, and yeah, it would be kind of a costly mistake. Or if you wait too long, maybe something expires, or the oils, they can completely separate and become harder to work with, and you'd have to reincorporate them, or if they reincorporate at all. So it takes a bit of planning, and that comes from knowing your craft and knowing how you practice with it. So to kind of mitigate those things.
Is there any kind of art project that you really wanted to do but never found the time to do yet?
A lot of them just sort of pile up. We got one for Oribus, and I spray painted the ornate frame that I found from, I think, Goodwill. It's been sitting there for many months, just trying to do all of them in between some really hectic work schedules thrown in there as well. So, and of course that tapestry, I have not yet actually proceeded with it. I've purchased the linen, and I've stretched it on a board, and I've sized like with glue, so you can close the fibers so the fabric actually doesn't rot from the oils, the oil paints themselves, and primed it, but I have not kind of settled on a vision that I wanted for it since my original commissioner is MIA. So, but I'm going to come back to that after a short while, and then probably bring it to me with to a market, because all I have to do is roll it up. It's not a traditionally framed canvas. I'm going to like embroider the edges and put tassels on it.
Where is life carrying you now, in general?
In general, you know, I'm always in the thick of the woods, or swimming in the same river I've always swam in. I kind of liken the path in life to like a river. Life is like a river, and kind of floating down, and you can have a boat, just swim. Sometimes it's turbulent, sometimes it's really clear, sometimes it's murky. You can't really tell what's beneath you or what's in the water. And that could just take a lot of symbology to it, just every little detail in that analogy. But it kind of winds around each corner, so I can't really see a whole lot ahead of me at times. So I play life by ear, simply by the fact of how I grew up. So each year I was moving to a different place, so I had nothing to really reliably plan for, because all of it would just make plans and God laughs at them. So you just kind of see how things change, and you just alter your course of action based on that. So right now I think it's pushing more towards like the area I've moved into is more of an arts area. I'm going to see if they do any like work for education things there, just if they would hire there. I'm not sure what they would even offer, and of course some of my friends were going to go meet and do some of the art markets down in Texas, or wherever in between, whatever looks like it would be good to go and attend and bring some stock to. And then it's just a matter of actually making the stock and taking it there and then sitting in a booth all day. So more of like an art becoming maybe a full-time thing at the moment, or at least a part-time thing, depending on with everywhere that I move to, my jobs change too. So
Yes.
yeah, so it really just depends.
So you're planning to be more physically based rather than digitally based?
um, I think I would still be both. I don't want to throw the digital stuff out the window, but I want to get more involved with the physical stuff. Simply because I think that is also an easy way to actually get out there and sell, and to get out there and form your reputation, or I guess your brand. I guess you could say it. People know who you are, like, oh, this artist does this, and they've been to a couple of markets. People see you and they know what you're about. So kind of like an exposure thing, and also networking. I think more towards that physical, and also just still releasing digital prints, and doing that side of things. Just kind of keeping them both up since I moved. So it's very easy to keep with the digital stuff and then the physical when I'm able to do it. So
Do you think always moving helped you with your art or detracted from it?
yeah, that's like a bittersweet kind of a thing. So there's a lot of grief behind that, where it's like, if I wasn't constantly uprooted like an uprooted tree, then maybe the tree could actually grow and bears fruit, instead of just constantly being stressed out to the point where it can barely survive. Or it's constantly dealing with having to adapt and change the locations, and all the energy is used on that instead of used for anything else. So kind of, I take what I can get, and I'm creating in the middle of all the chaos. Kind of, kind of wrangle some order out of the inevitable chaos that's always happening. Just find a way to have enough inner peace to enjoy a cup of tea, even though you're in the middle of a tornado. Your glass is breaking. So you're like, okay, ignore that. Yeah.
Do you think the kind of nomadic lifestyle is partly because of your spirits, or is that just the way that life worked out this time?
Probably a bit of both. I mean, what is life? Like, what propels it? What guides us to these ends? I mean, you could say it's spiritual. You could just say, if you're an atheist, oh, well, it's just the cause and factor. Maybe it's both. If you believe that there's a lot of intelligence in things, and they just do what they do regardless. So I think I naturally will go towards what I go towards, which is creative expression and building my life around that kind of thing. And I think, my experiences in moving around a lot and being nomadic does translate into the art. Um, since my practice is shaped by it and it depends on what I have around me, if it's not packed up in a box somewhere, or, a lot of the times it was very minimalistic, so I had very little tools to work with. So, and that does affect what I do. Sorry, I think it just depends on what your cosmology is too, and that if it's is it a lot of the spirits that are guiding you? I think it is for me and for my life, but it's going to be up to whoever to figure that out for their own, or even if they're aware of it, or if they choose to acknowledge it. I mean, it's a bit different. So
Do you think there are sedentary artists that don't move from like a singular spot that work with Paimon?
I think so. I think a lot of people, of it moving around a lot has become more prevalent. I think. Just do, especially now with COVID, with the work from home situations, people are just moving anywhere it's convenient. Um, but even since the turn of the century, it's become, you know, it's a rarity, especially in the United States, for people to be born in a household and to have a familiar or ancestral home, and then they also pass away in the same house. So just have a lot of people moving around. But I do think there are still a lot of people who maybe moved once or twice through their lifetimes, or especially early childhood, or maybe once or twice out of high school and out of college, or out of maybe a move for work. But I think a lot of people are born and raised in one city, and they usually can kind of stay in that city too, or their village, or whatever small municipality. Even if it's in the same house, then it's like they've spent a good stretch of time, maybe a decade or two, a couple, or a few more than that, in the same place.
If someone was to start working with Paimon and they wanted to start working with him because they wanted to be a better artist, what do you think this person should expect?
Um, Jeez, I was there's so many different experiences, especially reading about them with my friends, people in servers, people like, wherever you could go online into a space, and then of course Reddit, and it's just the whole gamut you could run, like good or bad, or insane or grounded. So it highly depends on you and the spirit and what facet of the spirit. So it's like, what quarter of the moon are you seeing through your bedroom window, at any given time, versus someone else on the other side of the world, the completely different background, completely different family, different personality, different. You could even maybe blame that on astrology or something. Maybe kind of how that dynamic between you and spirit is going to work out is going to be dependent on how you are, how you perceive things, and how you work with things, and then how the spirit is going to move through that and manifest through that. So it could be like a theurgical work where you're bringing yourself closer to that to work with it, or it could be any kind of setup. Everyone's got different perspectives. Trying to remember specific ones, but I mean, generally, some people have had some really jarring experiences. Some people get whiplash. um, some people are very they don't really notice anything out of the ordinary. It just feels like it's just completely natural. Maybe, I guess, aside from like some major life events, or specific things that are going on, or things that are happening around you, maybe. Some people can kind of have like a trial by fire, or it could just be a very supportive and very mellow type of thing that comes and rises between that. I think it really depends subjectively.
What do you think would be the worst case scenario versus the best case scenario in this case?
Yeah, so worst case scenario. Oh man, remembering a certain video from this like late worker type lady. It's out there if you search King Paimon on YouTube. It is this lady with this bright fuchsia lipstick, and it's very migraine inducing video color wise, but I think she had a very wild experience, and the second time I watched it all the way through, I felt her case is almost tragic because she has a lot of emotional baggage, a lot of her own psychological and mental health, and just anything else in her life. If you view spirits as an escape, or it's kind of like an addiction, you're going to have a lot of negative things come up. If you just view it like as an ATM, you probably have a different kind of experience where it's not a whole lot of substance. If you just view it as an ATM, like, hey, man, give me money right now. I need it now, with the urgency and the desperation, definitely. any kind of negative experience, and how personally you go, and how that goes into your mind, especially if you've had a lot of trauma, you're even unaware of how it affects you on a day-to-day basis because it's your normalcy. But then when you start doing specific things, a lot of that can get shoved up straight into your face. If you're not aware of it, I can't relate because I've always strived to be very aware and to break my chains, or the kind of inherited chains, or behavioral patterns, noticing patterns. So it really depends on the person themselves and what they're aware of, what they know they need to go over. Because it could really just come back into your face and you have a really horrible experience. It could be very heavy, or it could just be very turbulent. It could be activated through your body. There's a lot of people who comment about the physiological, or like the mind body kind of symptoms they have, where anxiety could rise, or like a mania, where there's a lot of energy, or they can be confronted with a lot of the shadows that of course, it's not, nobody wants to work with their shadow. They kind of forget things rather than face them in the mirror. But yeah, so you'd have to be prepared for that. And some people have a trial by fire where that you may be Paimon in the dream, or like almost like a borderline lucid or astral projection, where the spirit was very loud, extremely loud, ear-splittingly loud, screaming in their face. But then you could actually take away some important things from that, even though the delivery is something a bit jarring. Really depends on the person, what you're working with, and you don't know until you know. So that's why it's good to know yourself before you jump into any sort of occult activity, especially because a lot of it is highly psychological. Magic to me is very psychological. It's like a psychotheater. How these things play out. It's like a microcosmic kind of theater of how life is. It just is working as it is, and how you have that the tiniest compartments and the tiniest methods in the magical system. So, and the best case scenario is if you're aware and you've worked through a lot of things despite whatever is thrown at you, and you're not trying to lie to yourself. Because with Paimon, I think mirrors magically and symbolically are very significant. So, and through my other close friends too, and some of them, their patrons were like Lilith, or the other one, he doesn't really have like a set patron, but he's also an artist too, where they kind of always have this mirror association where the spirit turns into you first, and then, but it's also the spirit itself. So it will reflect in what it reflects in you, and then you see obviously what you have to work on. Maybe a lot of that is displeasing to look at, so that's more up to the person. Or best, and then best case scenario, some of it you can recognize as strengths, as the spirit can manifest things that can align with its sort of principles and identify those things as strengths or innate qualities that are good, and that you can expand upon and keep working with, especially maybe in terms with other magical abilities, like senses, or how you work with things, like how those best case scenarios are, and then how smooth that work goes, and how much you can get out of it, how much substance you get out of it if you are diligent in your practice. And you keep journals too, because it's important, even if you have a bad experience. Just because there's always usually something that's getting stuck there, which is a good saying, or wise saying, especially for Buddhism with meditations, is if it's causing suffering, it may be because there's something that's stuck, and you're trying to move it along towards natural course, where it decays or rebirths, or just does the natural cycles, and it's getting stuck for whatever reason. So if that's due to a trauma or a habit that's so ingrained, and maybe if it's a bad habit or a habit that was good at one point no longer works. So it's always good to be aware of yourself and how these things play out, for whatever end. And there could be things that could blindside you and take you like a freight train too. So yeah, from the top of the mountain down to the bottom, rock bottom. So it's all up to the people, I think, that choose to follow their path in which way that they're going to follow it. So,
Have you ever worked with any angels?
angels, yes, there's actually a couple of angels that really remind me of Paimon, just because the Paimon-centric view of some things, or just anything that you see like a perennial kind of seeking. Maybe Archangel Uriel, which is would be one of the four archangels, but it really just depends on what kind of system, also what period of, I think, the Catholic Church they would either recognize some angels and some others, and then they're scared of being too pagan, so they'll cut down the number of angels every year and just kind of shove other ones underneath the rug. So, yeah, Uriel. There's Kofsiel, and it looks kind of similar in a lot of ways, where it's like riding a dragon. It kind of reminds me of Visago or Argaris in a way. And there is, with Uriel, like the red and the kind of flaming colors, and the symbolism of like the book. So there's a lot of symbolism there, with like a tome of knowledge, and then a flaming sword, or if the robes that he's wearing, the color itself is significant. And there's many other angels, if you just want to go by the well-known ones. I mean, it's kind of funny because I know you had your UPG about Saint Michael, so and it's also funny with my experience with them. My mother's friend's tarot cards was like an angel deck, and I pulled, like, I think Gabriel and Michael, and they're saying love will soon come to your life. I'm like, nice try, angels. Nice try, that's funny. And then I meet my husband like later that year, and his favorite angel, or like with all the iconography he has, and the scapula and the statue, is all Saint Michael. So, and in my kind of syncretic view or perennial view, Saint Michael could also be, it could be theorized to be a syncretic with like Thor or kind of like lightning or thunder kind of principle, and I think gods are principles. So the idea is the core essence of an idea. So the kind of thunder that illuminates, and of course the swords. And swords are viewed, especially like within tarot, they're harsh, but they cut away at things. But they're double edged. They're good and bad, and they're very intellectual in nature. So they kind of show you things in your mind, or they bring a new sort of way to think about things and illuminate that kind of intellect. It's kind of my own UPG with there as far as that goes. But any really, really heavy angel-based like operations in magic, it's been a while. I wanted to get more into it, but then it's just there's so many things that you could be doing. There's so many tensions that are vying and being pulled in every which direction. So probably would do more in the future. I have a dictionary of angels, and they're all very interesting. But nothing has really pulled me and as much attention and as much like a personal pull that feels like it comes from within as much as I think the creative solar types of spirits, namely King Paimon or Helios or Apollo, Sweepius, Hygeia, kind of creation, and of course that also branches into the science and the literally hygiene. So as much that's probably where my wheelhouse is really probably parked in, to be honest.
Or love and light girlies that would be absolutely afraid of what you do. How would you compare an angel to a god and to a demon? Like, what's the difference?
I think it entirely depends on your cosmology and your worldview, how you categorize these things or don't categorize them. So, as a Platonist, I view these spirits as all in a more or less same kind of level. But it depends on your tradition. So, of course, angels are angels and demons are demons in one aspect. And then another aspect, you have good and bad of the same type of spirit. Like I think it's like Nikars are like a storm spirit. Those are mostly like in Scandinavian mythology and other areas around like the northwest European folklore regions. And though they're especially crossing the seas into the new world, they're either blamed for bad storms or praised for good weather. So and then you're hoping to encounter good spirits that don't completely make the weather very violent for you. So they could be good or they could be capricious and maybe mess up your things. And of course, I know Christians have a much deeper view than just a spirit decides to screw up your day. If it's a complete ruination of your soul or a complete ruination of the essence of who you are. But I don't believe that that something like that would be intelligent. I don't think it would have a name. I don't think you could work with it. I think this is also like a Jewish idea of like what is evil per se, but I would recognize it as just an actual lack of any substance, an actual lack or a total lack of anything. A lack of like a good substance that would help make it and give it a form and give it a spirit. Kind of like with disease and decay. So you have something that comes into being and then it slowly fades away. I don't think that necessarily needs to be. I choose not to be very neurotic with it. I don't subscribe to fear-mongering beliefs, and I don't think it's effective in any which way because you get people who go the complete 180 and then your whole mission is kind of foiled there. With a lot of people like that, kind of do the 180. They do something completely different, and then you've lost people in your religion. So I don't think it's very productive. I don't think it's very useful. I don't even think if that's the actual the way that things work. And so all these spirits, there's many different things under sun and sky. It really depends on what you're working with and what you find. You could slip and fall into a pitfall and hurt yourself, or you could, find a really beautiful view at the same time and then forage for some berries that don't kill you. But, it's that kind of thing. But of course, you got to be cautious and discern with what you're actually working with. And also these spirits, these daimons, in the kind of classical sense of Platonism, they are like emissaries of higher and more all-encompassing principles and emanations. So if you have like maybe a Matryoshka doll or like a couple of different umbrellas, so like the really large umbrella that encompasses absolutely everything is like the one or the source, and you have a couple of other major umbrellas that could be as viewed as like is the entire god, and then even smaller ones that trickle out from there. They're like the daimons, the familiar daimons, the daimons that are just at certain places, or your personal or familiar spirits. And this can get very animistic too, probably. So that's my general kind of cosmology. I choose not to fear the dark, and I also don't think that everything in light is going to be completely beneficiary for you. You can bind angels, and in some, the theory of how you could bind some of those angels in certain practices, and they could do very bad things. And how they are going to affect you in a given situation could be unideal, or it could be something that you were prepared for, or something you don't like, and it could be a little violent per se. Same thing is with maybe demons. So there's a way to go about them, and maybe you find different methods that work in different ways, or they don't really jive with certain things. There's certain ways that you can apply magic theory or the methodology. A lot of it is it can be subjective to the person, what their point of view is for that specific part. And overall, we think these things lead up to, like, smaller streams or rivers will lead up to larger bodies of water, and then those will all roads lead to Rome, and you'll go out into the ocean. So and then water is all water, so it's everywhere. It's the same water that's dirty, it's the same water that's clean, the same water that has salt or is fresh water, the water you drink and whatnot. So just how is that going to particularly manifest, and what's in it is, I think, is what things are going to come down to.
If someone was to approach any spirit marked as demonic and they have fairly negative view of demons, do you think that's gonna influence their interactions and experiences or not?
Yeah, so like a heavy bias. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of things that are contingent on you psychologically, and how you perceive things, and what your mindset is, and also your past experiences also go and inform your choices and how you think of things. So if someone has a very negative bent, maybe there could be positive things that could change that, or it could go into that pot of their overall experience, or it could just completely wash over everything. It's a very hard thing to try and persuade otherwise. People are going to make their own decisions, and you respect that. You can have a decision to make. It is up to you. Maybe we could say that your decision is the one that is a objective one that overrides everything else. But how can you really for sure decide something that's completely objective? There's always things out there that can challenge that. Which was what philosophy is here for. But it could definitely completely bias that to the point where it wouldn't matter if it was positive or not. You're still going to feel things. Your mind and your body is already arriving at a conclusion, and it's already going to feel maybe a heaviness, or maybe your stomach's upset or queasy, or your palms are sweating, whatever that comes up that would comprise specifically of a negative experience would manifest itself either way, because that's what you're already expecting. they always say, it's good to try and arrive at things with an open mind and a clear mind, and see where it goes, rather than trying to already categorize it before you could see how it even manifests or how it's going to go. You're kind of shooting the deer before you see the whites of its eyes, and maybe you miss completely, and yeah, I mean, I would just wish that, for people who have really bad experiences, my heart does go out to them. There's a lot of traumas that people go with within in religion at large. So, I mean, I don't know, I don't know everyone, so I can't for sure say what's going to, I would say, like in the actual clinical definition, what's going to trigger them or not, or what's going to bring up something. And it could be surprising to you to think, oh, there's no way that this could ever be a negative thing. Maybe not even evoke it, even be an angel, or it could be like a Hellenic pantheon, or whatever is your equivalent. And you could have some bad experiences, but you could choose to say, oh, this was just terrible and evil and get nothing from it, or you could say this is very challenging and very difficult and this is what I got from it. And so it depends on your point of view. You could just kind of sink down in the mud and be like, oh, life's terrible, or you could try to work with it a bit, So, and of course, a lot of those people don't want to hear otherwise if they're very, very, very negative. So there's only so much you can really talk to them. People are going to do what they're going to do. Sometimes you gotta let people just do what they do, even if it's completely self-destructive. There's just a lot of people I know over the years who have worked with demons, and it's a very, very horrible things they're applying with, because they just can't get out of the woods, so to say. They're stuck in the mud. They're just getting dragged all the way down. Like into the blood pits kind of thing, and they're just drowning in it. So, and then they fling that on everyone else because they're just so frustrated. So they start attacking everyone else around them because they're just gone. Maybe a boat flew over the cuckoo's nest at that point, completely grounded, and they get completely sick mentally and physically at that point. But yeah, it's a lot, and it really depends on what you're dealing with specifically and what you bring into that and what you get out of it. So,
Have you ever considered writing a book?
yes, yes, I can finally call on my essay writing skills and write a book. Writing whole term papers in 20 minutes. Oh man. There's so many ideas to pin down, and I'm not sure how to organize them yet. But I do want to. I've got like a couple of different, like, what do I even call this? Is this like a workbook? Is this just, I don't know how you would call it, really, a memoir? What would you even call it? Maybe to throw in some examples of rituals and what my experiences are, just like a journal with all of the things. This is also what I've named some social medias that I was going to restart. But I've yet to find exactly how to go about them. But it's definitely something that I have written down in my project planner. What kinds of books I could be doing in the future.
Because it honestly really feels like anyone can just invite you to a platform and go, Rianolakas, religion, go! And you will just go for 2 hours.
I will go, and I will go, because there's a lot to talk about. Don't even get me started on actually getting into the philosophic trends and schools of thought. People ask me all the time, like, what's a good recommendation to get into Platonism? It's like, there is none. You just go. You just start reading all of it, because there is no crash course video on YouTube. It's a lot, It's engagement. And that's what's the most important is engaging discussion, because otherwise it's not a living tradition, it's a dead one. So
Got any favorite books on either art or religion?
set favorites, maybe momentarily in passing, but right now I'm doing more just nose to the grindstone painting, but favorites over the years. Um, you should just look at source works is what my honest recommendation would be. Source works, the closest to the source, if you can understand it and actually get something from it easily is my complete recommendation. And a lot of modern authors can be very referential and they don't really actually explain concepts well, other than just regurgitating information. Even with the telephone game, they can get very confused, depending on what authors, but not to say there are some really good authors that do great work in with modern language, and also how to speak to people of any background. The list evades me right now, but if you just keep looking, you will find something that makes sense to you. My honest recommendation, what I've done is just go through like major religions, go through like small ethnic practices, folklore practices to gain an understanding of how, like, what do people make of things, like what do they think of it, how do they make of it, and how do they deal with it. What do they think and how and why? Which is kind of like where my interests have led me to now. Reading about religions as they are from many different sources, to the point where I can't even really recommend a set source. You just start reading a lot. And podcasts too. If you rather listen to audiobooks on your way to your commute, you just start growing it and start seeing. You'd get from like really old school texts too, and translations of them. Honestly, it depends. The more you have, and this is also true as for maybe for an artist, other people could relate. The more you have as a pool of reference, the more you can get inspired from. The more material you have to work with, the better, because it helps to better well around you and to better provide more perspectives rather than just one echo chamber or one little Plato's cave. We're all in the cave, but you can make it really big. So at least there's that.
If people wanted to buy your services, what do you sell and where can they find you?
Either you could just hit me up on Discord. It's the same name, Rianolakas. The numbers shouldn't matter. So I have like Metro, they just gave me like you could just create your own name just without the numbers. Or you can also my email forward inquiries to r period MITHTELOS Misatelos r period Misatelos at gmail.com. And I do have an imprint website, INPRINT, and you can just search up my name. My name full or like abbreviated to Ria or Rian is usually where you'll find me everywhere. Instagram to shoot me a DM, whatever works for you, to be honest. I am making a better website and restarting some of the socials, but they're yet to be operational. But in the future, I would hope to finish up the website so that people can just kind of go there for everything. And for events, that they can check what art markets I'm at. If they're around town, you can go there too and just get something physical. But that's more stuff that's in the works in the middle of the project. So.
And if they wanted examples of your work, that's probably Instagram, right?
Yeah, Instagram. I do need to update some more of that stuff. And print has some prints already available. But yeah, Instagram would be the place. I usually use Twitter only for like networking and keeping myself informed on what's going on with friends and events and things. But Instagram is where I've always posted the most, I think. So it just depends on how updated it is, but you can always shoot me a message and ask.
I have a cat. It's very noisy, which has been distracting me for a while, so you can be in the video too now, maybe, yeah.
Luckily, mine's like the nap on a chair, so I don't have to worry about her. I see her over there, she's just napping like a little loaf. the bread.
Yeah, I literally can't go through a singular video with all the cats just being quiet. So for the last like 10 minutes, I was just looking around because this one is just like, oh, I want to get into your drawers. I want attention. I'm whiny.
Start ripping everything up if you don't start playing with them.
I think we can end it here unless you have anything else to share or show to people.
I can actually show the Helios painting. I just have to go up and get it. So, and hopefully the webcam won't be too much of a potato quality, but
Ooh. Did it dry properly, by the way?
yeah. So this one was the one that was having difficulty drying. This is just like a 9x12 canvas.
How long did it
It's all in oils.
How long did it take you to do that?
I think the Selena one was like a couple of days. It was like very impromptu and like, I'm just gonna draw the moon for you and then I'm gonna ship it. But this one took a bit longer, only because I wasn't sure how much I wanted to match that style, and that style, that painting I had done was maybe 2.5 years prior. So my style had changed. So I'm trying to force myself to go back to where I was, and that was like a really impromptu kind of thing. And it's got the different epithets as well.
How much would that cost if somebody wanted to purchase something similar?
I have a poem as well, or the hymn. It's honestly would depend. So with these oils, you go anywhere from at least 100. It also depends on maybe for something this size, like a 9x12. And how many hours? I forgot how many hours I actually put into this and how much paint really is in it, because it is pretty thick. Especially with the detail on the shawl there. Really depends on the size, of course, and how much time I spent on, how much paint. So, I've covered materials and labor. At least $100 should be up to two. It depends on the subject matter. If it's something simple like this, price it like maybe like 110, 115, 120 range. I didn't use any actual gold foil in it. I used more of like I have a gold paint, so that also can depend. Depends on like how much. If we're talking about spiritual art, the rituals that can go into it. If you can opt in for how much kind of a work that surrounds the work you want it to be. So it could be, I could do a full invocation, evocation to get the, call the spirit into the canvas, kind of like a statuary. And, I can burn incenses throughout it. Of course, it's using materials technically too. So, and, using my body to have that as a conduit for, the spirits is also, it can be a very draining thing or it can be a very manic thing. It just depends what kind of energy is floating around. It's sorts of things that can go on. Of course, that can also be, you pay for all of those things. And it would really depend. Anyone can fully choose. My friend, he asked, just call Helios into it. And of course, he does his own rituals. So once he gets it and once he does his own practices with it and displays it on his altar. So it really depends, and you can choose not to do that, and that would, of course, be a different price point. So it depends.
Do people actually do that? Like send you a message going, and please invoke a spirit into the item?
Yeah, usually that's already kind of like an expected thing, or it's like a thing that's already talked about, like from the beginning. Like I want Helios, and just make it like because I do believe in kind of like a thing that it's not just the art itself. The art has to be living in a way. So in one way or another, it depends on how much work you want put into it as well. So
What do you price your
if you want to enchant it,
What do you price yourself per hour in general?
per hour. Yeah, that also could depend on materials and how big it is. I know. I think I was doing, for that large tapestry painting, I was going to do what it was, like 2 per square inch. It could be maybe anywhere from 50 cents to $2. It depends on the medium as well and how large the canvas is going to be. So something for like oils and doing all the other work entailed, so it could be anything from 50 cents to $2 per square inch.
I have a feeling that
Or
you're
for,
overworking yourself and underpricing yourself.
let me see, because I don't even have my notes anymore. Let me see.
Because that Helios thing, that took you a while. It wasn't like a.
It was mostly of it as a waiting game for waiting for the varnish to dry. So the work was mostly done within a week. The actual painting was done within a week, and of course I had a hectic full-time schedule, so it wasn't like just a straight week of work. But what was it up to? So I'm just doing some quick calculation. And honestly, I think you should, if anyone's watching, they would just inquire with me because I had these notes and packed them all up. So, and they of course they change with how much my workload is, and of course with demand. So, yeah, it just depends on a lot of factors. So, I would just say just to reach out would be the best, I think.
Okay, so if anyone wants a great spiritual artist that apparently also provides the services of invoking spirits into paintings, then your socials, I'm gonna put them down in the description below. I honestly do believe that you should write a book because whenever anyone asks you a question, you manage to provide a very long and grounded answer that goes on for quite a while. And I hope that you're as pleasant to listen to for everyone else as you are for me because I can just sit here happily for hours, go, okay, do go on. I'm enjoying this.
Yes, I'm glad. It's been very fun to kind of just step outside of my head for a moment, as not a whole lot of people are talking about this to the day-to-day normal daily routines.
So thank you for being here. And I'm just gonna see you around on Discord, and for everyone else, they're just gonna, I suppose, contact you if they wanna ever contact you and inquire about services. So, yeah,
Yeah.
see you around YouTube, and thank you for coming. Okay.